Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two of our summit. Yesterday, we had a very beautiful speaker, Ms. Rhonda, and I want to thank her for coming out and sharing her story of mental health and healing and success. Today, we're going to have another day of the same. We have a special guest, Ms. Gemma Moore. She's going to be coming out and sharing her story of her experiences with mental health in this community. But first, I want to say again, it is an honor to stand here today and see all of you who chose to come out, whether it's live or whether it's on the replay, to learn more about how mental health affects everyone in this community. If you are here today, you didn't just show up for this conference. You came to a space that was intentionally designed and designated to be sacred for all of us. It is a space for unfiltered truth, for profound vulnerability, and importantly, is for collective healing. For those of you who have took time off, who have moved mountains just to be here, thank you. Thank you for choosing to invest in the most radical act of resistance that we can make. The choice to prioritize our own minds, our hearts, and our own healings is the number one decision that we can make for ourselves in our lives. Today we are going to be talking more about mental health in the Black, Indigenous, People of Color, again, BIPOC community, which is basically a long word of saying minority community. We're not just going to talk about statistics. We're not going to talk about statistics. We're going to talk about the truth behind those statistics. We're here to talk about the unspoken weight that we carry and how we finally consciously choose to lay it down. Um, so when we talk about mental health and the Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, or BIPOC communities, we're not talking about an individual. I said this yesterday. You're going to hear a lot of similar things because if you missed it yesterday, you need to hear this today. This isn't about just one person's failure. It's about a systematic failure. We're talking about a systematic stress. Not just one person, not you, not me, not my grandmother, not your uncle. A system of failure. Think of it like this. Most communities deal with regular pressure of life, job, relationship issues, loss, financial, personal, and God forbid, actual familial or friendship loss. But for us, for minorities in the country, in this country, that stress is compounded and it is constant and it is an inescapable weight. We have to fight through not only the stress, but all of the stigma that come with being a minority in the community. We have to carry the stress of our ancestors, whether it's the legacy of slavery. Black folks. We have, and not even just African American. I say Black folks, African American communities are not the only descendants of slaves. We have a legacy of slavery in all cultures, colonization in all cultures, forced migration in all cultures, or systematic displacement in all minority culture communities. And that stress doesn't just disappear. It's embedded in us. It shows up as high rates of anxiety, hypervigilance, emotional numbing, and deep-seated fear that we pass down from generation to generation without it ever being named. We are often asked to heal from things that happened to our parents, to our grandparents, and we haven't been given a language or even a way to do that. How do we heal from something that we weren't around for, that was forced upon us? We face daily relentless assaults yeah, sorry again. We face a daily relentless assault of being overlooked, undervalued, or seen as a threat. Every time we walk into a board meeting, classroom, a store, grocery store, clothing store, whatever, we are aware of how we are being perceived. Follow through the store, people turning around and looking at you, especially if you're a minority in a predominantly one type of base. I walk into the room as the only Black person in the room, then people are gonna look at me and you can feel the awkwardness in the room. This constant performance we have to put on of acceptability, the emotional labor of switching who we are, the pressure to be twice as good, twice as nice, twice as pleasant, I guess, is a continuous low grade trauma that chips away at our sense of self worth and fuels our need to suppress our pain. And finally, we have that cultural trap, the myth that the strong black woman or the silent man or um, this community, that the idea that enduring suffering is a sign of inherent nobility. Like we have to stay silent in our suffering. We have to be strong in our pain and in our trauma and hold all of that in. And this ideology is just, it's really stupid, it's incredibly dangerous, and it teaches us that our mental distress is inconvenient, that seeking help is a betrayal of our resilience, and that our only option is to suffer in silence until we break. And that's not right. This creates a cultural barrier that is sometimes harder to cross than the external systematic one. So when we learn inside of our own homes that it is not okay to seek help, that everything that we go through mentally, we have other options besides talking about it. Keep it in, keep it in. You're strong, you suffer in silence. That is dangerous. And it comes more internally than externally, more than we know, you know. So what does this triple threat of systematic trauma do to us? It leads us to the profound experience of being overlooked. Being overlooked is not just about not getting that promotion. It's a mental health crisis. First, it leads to internalized shame. If the world consistently tells you that your feelings doesn't matter, you internalize that message. You start to believe it, that it's real. Like, I don't matter. I have to be strong. I have to be silent. I have to fight through whatever it is that I'm going through. When you really don't, you teach yourself that your pain is not worthy or is invalid. You start to believe the lie that if you just try a little harder, you won't feel this way. It'll go away eventually. You know, it'll go away. The pain heals all. You know, pain is beauty, pain is this. We are taught that pain teaches us lessons, which they are meant to teach us lessons, but it doesn't mean that we have to learn those lessons in silence. This is where depression thrives. This is where depression thrives, when you are overlooked, undervalued, and told that you have to allow yourself to feel trauma and pain in order to be successful or to be great. And that's not true. And second, it creates a deeper barrier to seeking help. So it makes you not want to go. The world has a history of misdiagnosing, pathologizing, making up, and institutionalizing people of color. That's just, that's what it is. I don't know how many times I've gone to the doctor because I sneezed and they tell me I have so many different things wrong with me. Come to find out that it was just a common cold. But I'm getting blood work done. I'm having all of this medication that I have to take, me personally, when it wasn't as bad as they diagnosed in the beginning. So that gives us this mistrust of the system that is supposed to be set up to help us. We have historically faced medical racism. People always assume that you're out here trying to get prescription drugs. I won't even take anything stronger than an ibuprofen, but if I go in there with a back pain, they automatically assume that I'm there drug seeking, even though there's nothing in my record that suggests that I have any addiction, a history with addiction or abuse to drugs. But that's the first thing that they look at when they see me. So when our community is struggling, the decision to call a therapist or walk into a clinic is not just a health choice, it's an act of vulnerability that often feels like a big risk. We fear judgment, being misunderstood, or being dismissed. And the third, it causes burnout and exhaustion. The hypervigilance required to navigate a system that actively works against you is exhausting. It drains our emotional reserves. We may look fine on the outside, but inside we are running on fumes. This constant state of fight or flight is a primary driver of anxiety, insomnia, and chronic stress disorders in our community. because we're always on edge. We always have to make sure that we're not doing anything wrong. We always have to make sure that we're not saying anything wrong. And because you're always on edge, you're always like, okay, I don't want to offend anyone, but I don't want to be offended. I don't want to look weak, but I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to appear broken. I don't want to be extra. I don't want to do this. You're worrying about what you're putting out there for people to see instead of actually being true to yourself, and that can cause so much anxiety, which again, insomnia, stress disorders, which affects our body physically. We are forced to carry these burdens of our personal lives, our family legacies, and systematic oppression, and yet we are taught to never show strain. But then you wonder why high blood pressure runs in certain communities. It isn't because of the way we eat. I mean, it could be, but a lot of people who are still eating healthy. It could be because of stress, because stress can cause hypertension as well. So, if this is the reality, if this system is designed to overlook our suffering, what is our collective mandate? Our mandate is to reclaim our minds. Reclaim our minds. We have to consciously reject the narrative that was written for us. Just give it back. That's not ours. It's not our story. It's someone else's story. We have to know that our story is written by us, not by our parents, not by our grandparents, and not by our ancestors. We have to be the ones to break the cycle of silence. We must reframe what resilience means. True resilience is not enduring quietly. True resilience is being brave enough to stop enduring and start healing. It's saying, I am not going to let this generational pain continue through me. I am the generation that stops the cycle. That's power. That's power. Self love in our community is not an indulgence, it is a revolutionary act. It is the conscious, difficult work of unlearning generations of self neglect, internalized racism, and the fear of seeking help. It's putting down the armor and choosing the journal, choosing the walk, choosing the therapist, even when it's hard. It's acknowledging that your peace is worth the fight. Collective healing, that's what the goal is. And that's why we are here today. We're here today because healing is not a solo journey. The trauma we carry is a collective, and therefore the healing must also be collective. We must create spaces like this summit, like this place, and more where we can show up unpolished, authentic, and without the mask. We must become the community that sees each other, validates each other, and refuses to let any of us suffer in silence. Our job is to be the reflection that the outside world refuses to be. I know this is heavy. This is heavy. This is a lot. But before we dive into the next speaker, Miss Jim, who she made a very, very big dent in this community, and she's going to be coming on after me. Um, so before we dive into that, I want to bring all of this context home because I am not just the facilitator here today. I am a woman who has walked through this fire. My journey is a testimony to everything that we just discussed. It's a story of generational trauma, being overlooked from birth, and the feeling of deep, deep isolation, shame, and everything that comes with the pain that nobody wants to see. I had every cultural and systematic reason to stay silent, to be strong, the strong one, until I broke. I remember a time when I sat by myself suffering an incredible loss, a loss that just kind of made every other wound I've ever carried look like it was nothing. And that's when I hit my mental rock bottom, when I almost gave up. I was on the brink of being completely broken by the weight of my past and the systematic silence around my pain. But in that darkness, I made a choice. I made the choice to rise and to start with two simple, terrifying steps: acknowledging that I needed help and starting the slow, deliberate work of reframing my trauma into my training. My story is very unique. It's in pain. My story is not unique. It's pain. But I hope it becomes a very positive outcome to those who are still struggling with taking that first step. Because my story is proof that we can reclaim our power, that our mental health is mandatory, and the story written for us does not have to be the one that we finish. Now, what I am not what they did to me. I am not what they did to me. You are not what they did to you. I am who I choose to become. And now I want to share with you how that choice has made what, excuse me, made what that journey looked like. Well, how that choice I made and what that journey looked like, and the tools I used to greatest shame, my greatest loss, my biggest defeat into my greatest strength. So when you hear my story, don't just hear it. Hear your own resilience. Hear the voice inside of you that is ready to rise. This is a story, my story of rising strong and reclaiming my mind. Okay, so um, I just got a message from Jim. She's going, because I was going to speak after her. Um, so she's going to be a little late. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to message her now. So there we go. And that's fine, because her story is worth the wait. Mine, we went through this a little yesterday, and we're going to, if you didn't hear it yesterday, you're going to hear a big part of it again today. Um, so again, I like to welcome you all. Welcome you all. Let's not just begin with the simple, everybody want to applause or her, but with the presence. I ask everyone here to take a moment and connect with your deepest self. Feel the ground Feel the grounding presence of your body in your chairs or wherever you guys are sitting at, in your bed, in your chair, wherever, and acknowledge the absolute profound weight of your existence in this space right now. Today, I want to discuss the single most revolutionary political, spiritual, and personal act of Black or brown or whatever, red, green, whatever, yellow, whatever your culture has been labeled as, whatever you can. I want to help you guys undertake the establishing absolute mental freedom. What does it fundamentally mean to declare this mental freedom? What does that mean, mental freedom? It's it's the recognition, absolute recognition without any form, compromise, or apology that your mind, your complex emotional ecosystem, and your sense of peace, and that your sense of peace are your highest, most sacred, unalienable, and self-governed territory. So that's all. That's yours. It belongs to you. This is not just aspirational language. It is a foundational, non-negotiable truth. There's far too many of us, especially women of color, in this space. This is essential. This is essential inner territory, and it has been under constant aggressive, systematic attack. Not only systematic, it has been battered by relentless forces of inherited generational trauma that cripples chronic stress and the structural reality designed to keep us exhausted, reactive, and psychologically off balance. These are things that were put in our place, in our face, and it was meant to stop us from being our true selves, from inheriting that true power. And I ask you now to confront this with this question with me. What does it truly signify to rise profoundly from trauma? To confront adversity every single time, every single day, and emerge on the other side, not just intact, but fundamentally transformed, more centered, and infinitely more powerful in your mind. So, what does it truly signify to rise from profound difficulty and trauma? What does that mean? I'm going to let that question sit with you for a moment. So, when I speak of rising, I'm speaking beyond the superficial motivational, you know, basic inspirational speeches. I'm honoring that unyielding resolve that it takes to consciously pull yourself up after being physically, emotionally, or spiritually flattened by life's heavy hands. I'm acknowledging the deep, often agonizing, and utterly private psychological warfare that we have to fight every day. The fights that wage in the deepest hours of the night when we're asleep, well, not even when we're sleeping, when we're trying to figure out ourselves, laying in bed with no idea how we got here and how we're going to get out of it. Against complex trauma, against the crushing weight of emotional exhaustion, against the relentless, coercive grip of anxiety, and the profound depression that works tirelessly to convince you that you are flawed, that you are broken, that you are permanently insufficient. These are the exhausting daily struggles against emotional numbness and the persistent, overwhelming alarms of hypervigilance that keeps our body on high alert. This entire journey, this ascent to healing, is not the search for perfection. As you can see, I make a lot of mistakes. I own my mistakes. I love my mistakes. It's not about being flawless, it's about being you. It's not a performative facade of wellness for the outside world to see. It is the brave, vulnerable, and utterly real act of standing fully in your complicated, messy truth, allowing yourself to tremble or weep when necessary, and yet still proclaiming with every cell in your being that I refuse to yield my mind. I will not be defined or confined by the forces that attempted to destroy my spirit. I will not. That's something that we have to learn how to build within ourselves, because for years and years and years we have been told to stay down and be weak and to not love ourselves. And that's what this summit is about. It's about to change those images that we put in our own minds because of external factors, whether it is within our families or within the system. This means consciously and aggressively rewriting your life, rewriting the way you see your life. It is a spiritual alchemy of converting the coercive, painful question, why did this happen to me? Into the fierce, declarative challenge. Observe what I build now with this in this foundation. So that's a challenge to yourself to say, you know what? I don't care about why this happened to me. I understand that this has happened to me. This is not taking away from what happened to me, but watch what I do with the foundation. It involves harnessing that pain, the heavy history of the visibility of your scars, and treating them not like they are inherited liabilities, but as intense, purified fuel for your radical mental transformation. For many of us, we don't really we don't really get a lot of peace in our lives. It's something that we had to fight for. Safety was not something that was given to us. We had to intentionally, meticulously engineer it. Our voices were designated silent or irrelevant. So we collectively elevate them to an undeniable power for all people of color, Black women, Black men, brown women, brown men, specifically, continuously. contestedly damaging the narrative that society has attempted to put on us, demanding recognition for our full, complete humanity. We are a part of this race. We are human beings, and we're not just things that are supposed to be strong, silent, and still while things just tear us down. Our commitment to the profound mental wellness transcends the person. It is a historical undertaking of reclaiming and liberating. By choosing to heal, we are not merely mending ourselves, we are actively, fiercely, and defiantly serving this insidious transmission of lines that were inherited through generational pain, through systematic trauma, and we have to say no. We are refusing to permit historical and complex trauma to rewrite the final chapter of our families, fighting to construct the inner sanctuary of mental freedom in a world that was systematically designed to withhold that very peace from us. This mental freedom is a non negotiable command, and it is the absolute total rejection of the idea that fear, cultural shame, or structural oppression should govern the trajectory of our inner emotional lives. And if you're here today, you have already mobilized that you are affirming with your presence. The intergenerational cycle of suffering terminates here and stops today here. And I claim with me, and I claim my freedom. That's what you're saying today, just by showing up here, whether it is live or you're listening to the replay. You are claiming today that the intergenerational cycle of suffering terminates and stops here with me, with you, and I and you claim your freedom. We claim our freedom, so we cannot effectively engage in the difficult, necessary work of profound mental healing without naming, mapping, and dissecting the trauma foundation from which we stand on. Our persistent psychological struggles are rarely individual defects. They are more often than not rational, complex systems of deeply toxic societal architecture constructed upon the centuries of systematic oppression and chronic violence. One of the things we have to deal with is inherited trauma. We carry a completely invisible psychological weight of inherited trauma. This trauma is passed down through both our family members and society, conditioning us with this dense residue of slavery. Again, we spoke about this before, colonization, economic marginalization, and the ceaseless draining of micro and macro aggressions that are a constant and unwelcome part of our daily reality. This inheritance does not just manifest physically. It doesn't. It manifests in stress related conditions, and it severely impacts our mental states and persistent in us being hypervigilant. It is a state of perpetual readiness, scanning our environment for imminent threat. So we're always looking. We're always out here looking for ways to stay safe, but triggers. We're always making sure that we're not saying the wrong things, doing the wrong things, walking the wrong way. You know, you walk down the street, you see someone gripping their purse a little tighter, so you try to walk a little over to the side so that they won't feel unsafe with you standing next to them. It enforces emotional suppression, demanding we sit still in our most authentic feelings and ensure that the outside world feels harmonious and safe, and that they can survive. And it is very draining. The lifelong labor of self editing, masking, and this performance that require us just to navigate professional or public spaces. Again, walking past the door, someone's locking their car door. You know, we metabolize the suffering of countless acts of injustice until we function in a state of chronic energy hemorrhage. The sheer cognitive load required for continuous switching in itself can put us in a mental health crisis because it takes away from who we are. It takes away years of potential life and fatality just by having to constantly switch who we are to help with someone else's comfort zone. There is also the icon of the unbreakable woman. This culturally ingrained pressure is perhaps it's the worst and most suffocating barrier to our mental restoration. We are psychologically trained to equate vulnerability with failure, to view our quiet suffering as a form of noble endurance, and to believe that we must shoulder every external burden until we are completely consumed with all of it. This toxic build up teaches us and it manipulates us into um, prioritizing outside performance metrics over internal psychological peace. This choice actively and aggressively breaks down our mental health foundation, and it paralyzes it's paralyzing, and it creates burnout, a level of exhaustion where trivial tasks like just getting up and cooking breakfast feels like a big physical, just it's just so hard for us to do. And it enforces the crippling isolation because strong women role strictly forbids seeking genuine connection or showing the slightest weakness. It fosters terrifying psychological narratives that our emotional pain is merely an inconvenience to everyone around us, especially within our immediate family. As a black woman, you got that title, an angry black woman. We're not all angry. Sometimes you just catch us on a bad day, but to get the label of an angry black woman just because you have feelings and emotions, or a lot of people say this, and this is something that I've heard throughout my life. It's that time of the month. So our emotions are always because of something. We're being attacked because of the feelings that we have to learn how to hide. The terrifying psychological narrative that our emotional pain is an inconvenience to everyone around us, especially within our immediate family, is horrible. When we finally reach the point of emotional exhaustion, the cultural response is often it's really just it's dismissive, and it's what are we supposed to do with that? We have to manifest positive thoughts or just be grateful, for whatever happiness we can pull out of that situation, which only deepens the cycle of silence, shame, and self-blame, effectively denying access to the necessary clinical or communal support for our pain. This is the challenging terrain that we must not only navigate systematically, but dismantle. Recognizing our persuasive exhaustion is completely rational, adaptive, and it's a rational, adaptive response to this flawed external architecture. Never a personal deficiency. Never a personal deficiency. So we must seek internal liberation from the oppressive narratives. I'm checking my email, seeing if she's ready to start yet. And she is not. So what we're going to do then, I didn't want to go too deep, you guys. I was trying to kind of talk around a lot to see if she was going to be ready, but she is not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to pull up my speech because I wasn't ready for my speech just yet. And we're going to go into mine, and hopefully she will, because she wasn't feeling well, you guys. We've always under some kind of attack, but it's okay because even with that, we're going to make it through this. Even if you just have to hear my speech, we're going to make it through this because this is why we are here today, to show that no matter what comes, whatever obstacles jump in front on our path, I'm going to finish this as soon as this opens. There we go. So I'm going to tell you a story, and it is my story. It's about when I was a little girl. So when I was young, I was born into generational trauma. Things happened in my life, well, before my life, that would shape how my life was written. And all of this happened before I could even cry out in pain before I even knew what trauma was. My story started with my father. My father, if you know my story, he is 46 years older than my mom, and he began violating her when she was young. She was 8 years old, and because my grandmother was done in similar ways as a child, she didn't understand. I can't say she didn't understand, but she allowed things to happen to her own children because things were happening to her. This is called generational trauma. So we silence ourselves, and then we allow our children to suffer from the past that we had to live through. And as a Black woman, I'm realizing that it isn't just in my family. It was a constant. It was the consequence of the system that tried to break my ancestors, leaving this deep, unseen wound that was passed down through silence, survival, and survival until I chose to stop the cycle. So back then, it was, now we call it generational trauma, and back then, they just called it life. And I'm getting an email right now. Okay, so I'm so sorry she's not going to be able to make it, you guys. She's not well. She has pre-existing conditions as well. Um, she is not feeling well, so she doesn't have it in her to get. She's been trying all morning to get up, and she's going through something right now personally. Again, we all have our days, and Miss Jim, we are okay. We love you. Take your time. Um, take care of you. Take care of you. So she, again, this is mental health. So I am letting her know. So we're going to just hear my speech, and then we're going to let you guys go. So, Miss Jim, I hope you feel better. I really do. Don't worry about it. I read the full message. Not everything is for me to share with you guys, but she's going through her own things, and she needs more support than anything right now, and that's what she's going to get from me and hopefully from this community. Um, so back to my story. I grew up in a household where I was overlooked. I grew up in a household where um, showing feelings and emotions was not accepted. I grew up in a household where my voice and my presence was always a problem. So I had to learn that opening my mouth came with a beating. So I got really good at hiding who I was. I was able to hide to smile to hide the pain. I had this smile. Everyone, oh, you have to smile, smile, smile. But that was my mask. I had to keep quiet to avoid being beaten. And sometimes that didn't always work because my mother had her own set of trauma that she had to deal with. And she was also, that trauma turned into addiction. And the person that so she was the person that was supposed to protect me, but she couldn't because she was broken and had no one to help her with her pain. She didn't have as much support. So what did that do? That spilled over into my life with abuse, with physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, and I had to deal with all that in silence. But I was still show up to every day, beaten, bloody, hurting, but still with that big smile on my face because that smile was the only armor that I had to protect myself. I couldn't let things anyone know what was going on in my home. I was afraid. And by the time I turned 14, I started to run away because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I found out that monsters live everywhere. They live everywhere. They're not only in my home. And the monsters in the streets were worse than the monsters in my home because at 16, I met my ex-husband. He was 7 years older than me. And he was controlling, violent. He was very dangerous. And from the moment I met him, I knew. I saw the evil in his face, in his voice, in his laugh, and his smile. And I tried to get away from him, but I couldn't. I couldn't. I was trapped in it seemed like it was forever. And being the age that I am now, 12 years is not that long, but when you're going through it, that seems like a life sentence. And there was another kind of violence. It was very, very abusive. It was filled with manipulation, sodomy, torture, darkness. But in that darkness, something happened. I became a mother, and everything changed. For the first time, I understood love. I loved my children, and they loved me. And I looked into their eyes and saw something that woke me, something that woke me, something that I thought was gone. Was that fight to keep trying, because I fought as a baby, a newborn. I died 3 times. I was in the hospital for 10 months, and I had to fight for my life. And I found that fight again. And after 12 years of that torture, I got my freedom, but that freedom came with a price. It did not come with peace. I didn't understand what healing was. I was out of the relationship, but I still carried a lot of that pain with me. I carried a lot of the trauma from being abused by my mom, from the things that happened to me when I was in the streets, and I took it with me in my everyday life. I found a circle of people who didn't have my best interest at heart. They took advantage of that trauma, and they used it to try to make me feel like I was family, and they took advantage of the love that I had for them, because all I wanted was for the people in my life to feel be happy, and I wanted to feel accepted. I trusted these people, but they put me in a dangerous situation time and time again. And as long as it didn't affect my kids, I was fine. I worked, I took care of my home, I took care of my children, and I still tried to be there for my kids while holding all of this mental baggage together. And I did the best I could. I did the best that I could. I gave them love that I had never received, and I poured everything into them. But I did still make mistakes, but they were my mistakes to make. And as long as I kept trying to build something real, I knew that things would be okay. Trying to believe that my life was more than pain. I even went back to college to get a degree because I wasn't allowed to finish high school. I had to sneak to finish high school. I wasn't allowed to go to college, which was my goals in life. I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to go to Spelman. I wanted to go to Spelman so bad, but that wasn't in the cards for me. So I just went to get my degree, because however you get your, no matter how you get your degree, just get it, or whatever goal that you set out for yourself. And just when I started to think that things were starting to get better, I was in college. I was going to get my degree. My son passed away. My 19-year-old son was shot and killed. January will be 9 years since he's been gone. And this just made everything I went through feel like nothing. People judged me. People turned on me. People talked about me behind my back. His biological father, he stole the money. I was betrayed by someone who I thought was a sister. She put me out in the streets days after my son died. I was homeless and isolated. And the man that I was with, who tried to be there, his family really didn't know me. They didn't care for me, so they did their part to come in and tear my relationship up. But that wasn't even the worst. Is when I got the envelope with his death certificate that broke me. I sat in my car and I cried and screamed, and no one was there for me. And that scream, it came from a place so deep that it didn't feel like it was human, and I was alone. But in that moment, I almost gave up. I truly thought that this was going to be it for me. I was done. I was ready to let my sister have my kids and just give up on life. But I felt my son. Even though he was gone, I still felt his life. I felt him, his light, and I heard him telling me to not give up and helping me remember that his sister and his brother needed me, and they were watching me, hoping that their mom would return and keep fighting for them. So I did. I sat in that car and I didn't just survive. I made a choice to remember who I was. I made a choice to fight like hell, like I had from the beginning. And I made a choice to rise, even when I was broken and shattered, silenced, abandoned, abused, judged, betrayed, and buried under this loss. And I'm still here, standing and rising. I was the one who had to get up. I was the one who had to say, no, I will not let this evil win. I was the one who had to heal. And was it easy? No. Did it happen overnight? No. Am I still healing? Every single day. But the truth of this lesson is that no matter how bad things are, you still have a choice. You have a choice to heal, rise, to walk, and open a new chapter in your life, no matter how hard it is to close the chapter behind you. And it wasn't a mistake. It was just a chapter that I had to close. And now I'm writing a new one. Now I'm not afraid to ask for help. Now I understand that I don't need permission to be happy. And I didn't share the story to shock everyone. I did it because I know someone who is carrying this type of silence, someone who is carrying that second skin, someone who is trying to make sense of their pain and battling the shame that was never theirs to begin with. And I share this story because too many of us right now have been taught to stay silent and allow all of this trauma to sit still inside of us and not seek the mental health that we deserve. So by the end of this, I don't want you to just hear my story. I want you to feel your own story rising in you and understand that healing is not the end. It is a choice that you make every day. No matter how dark your past is, you have the power to reframe and build something powerful from the rubble and to write a new chapter that reflects who you really are. Who you really are. So for me, that looked like not being afraid to ask for help. And it was an everyday battle. It was an everyday fight. I did to say that I jumped up and sought mental health the day after this situation would be a lie. It would be a lie. I did not. And then I did not. I had to think about the people that I wanted to have in my life. I had to stop and tell myself that um, the programming that I received was just an inheritance of silence. And it was given to me before I possessed the capacity to articulate that, before I was able to have a coherent thought, that the trauma was already written and it wasn't mine. It wasn't my shame. I carried this shame of isolation. I carried the shame of my family circumstances. Excuse me, sorry, allergies, you guys. And believing that any hurt, any failure, or any was lack of control was fundamentally my own feelings, and it was because of my existence. So, um, the initial choice that I made years ago to reclaim, I call it the reclamation. This is the systematic, intentional process of reconstructing your life, not only on existing or standing on stable ground, but on ground that you have intentionally designed, that you have fortified and secured for lasting psychological health. This is called challenge. This is the challenging journey of becoming your own author, to write your own story and create lasting peace, deliberately using those painful blueprints of your past as an unexpected structural plan for your future resilient and your cognitive mental health. For decades, I was trapped. I was trapped with the restrictive narrative scripted by the people who have abused me and some systematic oppression that defined a story of permanent victimhood and chronic uh, self hatred. This required physical seizing. This journey required physical seizing that damaged the blueprint and systematically rewrote every single line of false limiting narrative, those lies that people told me to believe. This complex process necessarily, the complex process necessarily involves grieving the life that you had to sacrifice and mourning the version of yourself that you had to become just to survive. So you must acknowledge the loss of the old to accommodate yourself before you could fully occupy the space of the new. This entire process of the question, why me? It transforms into the actionable, powerful, and forward moving declaration of watch me. This is how I engineer my new reality. This is how I learned how to release myself from the life that was written for me. And it comes by reframing. I had to reframe. Most of my life, I lived inside of a story that was told to me. I had to reframe on how I saw myself. I no longer was that little girl who had to beg for love, who had to shrink for love, who had to stay quiet and be in the corner. I began to see the fire inside of me. I had to see that fire that kept me alive through all of the beatings, through the betrayal, through the unbearable loss, not as a curse, but proof of my power. Every scar, every moment that I wanted to just give up, it didn't become my failure. It became fuel. And the refrain didn't come easy because my past was, as you can see, really, really hard. I had to deal with the loss, I had to deal with everything, but it did not erase me. Reframing did not erase that. It honored my past. It dared me to build something from it. It wasn't just survival. It was becoming someone that was unstoppable. And I used to have to make up reasons as my for my pain. But when I started to see my pain as purpose, I used that. I used that. I did not look at it as punishment anymore. It was like when I started to reframe my experiences and stop asking why me and started asking what, now I began to understand that my story was raw and it held power. And that same pain that almost killed me could be the same pain that helped someone else live. I chose to use that pain to help someone else live. I chose to see my trauma as something that shaped me into someone who knows how to lead and love and see people in their darkness and remind them that there's still light. That this is not about toxic past, but about creating a positive future, and where we pretend like where we stop pretending that those things didn't hurt, and start shifting the way we carry that strength, that pain, to believe that nothing that we went through was wasted, and that every time we got up, every time we kept going, it would be easier. Shaping, it was easier to not quit, to reframe how I look at my power, by not forgetting what happened, by excuse me, but by refusing to let it define who I was becoming. So I didn't always rise gratefully. Sometimes I crawled out of bed not knowing what to do with that day. Like today is a perfect example. We have to work with what we have. Every incident is not a life or death sentence. I have a really good friend who is sick and unable to come now. I'm not going to use that as, oh my God, everything is over. I'm honestly more concerned. I want to check on her right now because I know what it feels like to feel like you have done something, you're committed to something, and and things, and when life happens, you have no choice but to do what you have to for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not something that we can change. And a warrior charging through life, even though you're barely holding it together, with your hands shaking and refusing to let go, is not healthy. There are days that I didn't think I could take another hit, but I still got up, swinging, and I was just trying to stay conscious, and that wasn't healthy. That wasn't healthy for my mental health. And even in the middle of the chaos, there was still a little flicker of me, like that stubborn little spark, like that said, "You're not done." But I had to let myself rest before I got back up. And it wasn't because I have it all together. It was because I knew that staying down would let them win, and I couldn't let that happen. So when I talk about rising, I'm not talking about this picture perfect moment where there are no mistakes, where there are I'm trying to think, obstacles. That's the word I'm looking for. But I'm talking about those ugly, painful, silent victories, the kind where no one sees you get laid down, but you get back up, and you know you did it. I don't care how you rise. I don't care if it comes screaming or crying. Just rise. That's the part that matters. So I shared my speech. I did. This was something that was not expected because again, I had another beautiful, and I heard her speech. It was beautiful. And maybe one of these days we can get her together and we will work together to get so that she can share her speech. Today is not that day, but another day will be. So what I will say is I would thank you all for coming out because she had this long, and it was an hour long. So we were going to work this together, and I want to thank you all for coming out. For those who want to learn more, you can also look at the replay from yesterday's summit and hear this saying. I don't want to say the exact same story twice because I did this speech yesterday. I had some differences in it, but again, it was something that needed to be said just in case you guys missed it yesterday. Um, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to invite you all to check out my website, www.soulfulpursuersjourney.online, for more events and summits that will come together. And thank you so much for being patient with me. Thank you so much for seeing me at my highs and my lows and still being there to support me, because it takes a community. And I look forward to bringing more events like this to you in the future. I hope you guys had a wonderful holiday, and I hope you guys enjoy this season. Stay strong, stay encouraged,